You are a creator. You create your career, your business. You create a family. You create your future. On the Results Driven Life by Design broadcast, get ready to hear from people from all walks of life and how they overcame the odds to create a life led by purpose and vision. Here's your host, Kia Arian.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's broadcast. I always begin by reminding you that your skills, your experiences, and your talents have been given to you for a reason. No one else has that unique combination. No one else has your voice. You have a message that the world needs to hear. And so, as you listen to today's show, I invite you to a greater vision for your life that resonates beyond what you do, but why you do it. So, on today's show, I have the pleasure of talking to Charley Mann. Charley is the founder of Law Firm Alchemy, where he provides coaching and courses to independent entrepreneurial law firm owners. Now, Charley himself is not a lawyer, but he cut his teeth at a law firm, working in marketing and business development and growing that law firm from 1.1 million to 3.1 million and counting. In fact, I met him at the start of his career, and I have a vivid memory of walking into Ben Glass's conference room and a young Charley sitting at the table being introduced as the new video guy. And that was
we go back.
Yes. And that was when video was all the rage. So we were so excited to start doing video. Fast forward 13 years later, in July of last year, Charley founded Law Firm Alchemy. And from what I understand, not surprisingly, you have surpassed the goals you've set for yourself and your business in this short 12 months. So welcome, Charley. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Kia. And let me say something real quick about like the revenue and stuff for the law firm. I'll shine a lot of credit on really people who took the ball and ran with it after I got some things started there at Ben Glass Law. So like shout out to Tiffany Swedensky in particular. She's really the one who took what had gotten started and really dug in and made that amazing and really kick-started that marketing. Very proud of everything that happened. But that was around the time that I started working more and more with Great Legal Marketing. And so she was the one who just deserves a ton of credit there.
Well, thank you for saying that. And that just goes to show that there are marketers and people with integrity. So, who give credit.
There we go.
Credit is due, because there are people out there who, they ruin it for the rest of us. But there are people who truly have integrity and stick to the results and credit where the results come from. So appreciate you saying that. So Charley, you're prolific online. So you have a robust LinkedIn presence. Your posts are engaging, they're informative, they're very transparent. You email your followers regularly with interesting personal emails. You've created a unique brand voice. You have a strong brand presence. You send a print newsletter. You have a mastermind. You have a beautiful family. You have unique hobbies. You're basically perfect.
No, not in the least. Deeply flawed human being right here. Deeply.
It goes to show the power of good marketing, good messaging, and really just doing, many things at once that are attractive and attract the kind of people that you want to work with. Now, one of the things that I strive to do on this show is to go a little deeper. So like you said, behind the scenes, there's a story behind the scenes. And so the premise of this podcast is to hear from people from all walks of life and backgrounds and experiences and how they overcame the odds to live lives led by purpose and vision and how it impacts the world around them. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with you. So despite this sort of perfect appearing, doing everything correct, I'm going to dive into the deep end, like cold water and all. Okay.
Awesome.
Right,
I love swimming in a nice cold lake, so this will be perfect.
All right, perfect. Maybe like I'm back behind you. I'm like push you in. So here we go. Excellent. Right. So it seems to me that everyone at some point in their lives, they hit a crisis point, and it feels like they have to make an all or nothing decision. It's a turning point that tests their resolves. It questions their identity, threatens relationships. It risks failure, all the scary stuff, right? So my question for you is, is that a place that you have experienced? Or as a coach who works closely with people on these journeys, have you seen that? And what does it look like?
So yes and yes. Definitely went through it myself. Certain parts of it, are probably not airable. I'll always share exactly up to the point that I know that I can comfortably share, but some of it may be held close to the vest. Definitely coaching clients as well. And that the core conceit, you touched on it, Kia, is identity. And for me, it was what I colloquially, I just butchered that word, I refer to as my put up or shut up moment. Actually, what's interesting is the first time that I had a put up or shut up moment wasn't a crisis moment. It was when I was living in this condo that exited into the neighborhood. And one morning, it's very early in the morning, like probably 6:10 or something like that. And I hear two dogs barking and snarling outside, and I hear human voices screaming at these dogs. It's very clear that these animals are fighting. And the reason I bring this up is because I had one of those moments where, a lot of people talk a big game, right? Where they go, if that were happening around me, I would totally like race out there and help the people. But most people keep their door shut and they do nothing. I remember having that intellectual moment and deciding, I've told myself this is the type of person that I am. So am I going out there, or am I really not that type of person? Your call, buddy. And so I open the door in just my sweatpants and I go hustling out to see two dogs tearing into each other about 50 yards away from the apartment door or the condo door. Went over and started trying to help these people get these dogs apart, one of which went running up. But this was one of those situations where I could have just decided, I'm not going to get involved. And I did. And I was like, you know what? I think I know better who I am in this moment. So I had a huge put up or shut up moment in the last couple of years that involved me launching the business. It was, look, man, basically the quick version of it is, are you an entrepreneur or not? You know that you want to own something. You've had this objective for yourself for a long time, and a door has closed. Are you going to open your own door? Okay, I'm going to meet that moment. I'm going to validate the identity that I have perceived in myself for a long, long time of who I believe myself to be, and now who I know that I am. And, in the midst of that decision, we have my in-laws living with me. My mother-in-law was literally dying before our eyes. She died in our home 5 weeks before I pressed launch on the business. I mean, I literally was there the moment that she took her last breath. And I can tell you that it's not easy to, open a business, to do all of that work while dealing with the complication of literally watching someone die, having your spouse go through that up close. And my spouse, Missy, she's a nurse, so she also was the caretaker for her mother. Boy, oh boy, that whole situation was incredibly complicated. I'll never say that I was at my best self all the time going through that, because I was going through my own thing. And just a period of like 8, 9, maybe 12 months, if I really look back on it, of swirling chaos in which my identity was absolutely in question.
Wow. Well, that's a lot. Like, because it's
Yeah.
stuff that you don't see. We see this. We really do see the surface of what people are doing, and we think, boy, he sure got it good. He knows what he's doing. And sometimes I think where people get tripped up, well, at least what I observe, because I coach people too, right?
Yeah.
So they're always looking for the thing, the tool, the tip, the strategy that's gonna move them over, move the needle for them. And that's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that does help. But
Yeah.
there's that whole idea of those beliefs, what they believe about themselves and what they're capable of, that that holds them back, right? Right.
Yeah.
So in your dogfight story, You believed, am I the person who's willing to get involved? And like, what other things, like, who was that person that you said, are you not in that dogfight? Are you just kind of shut the door and let people work it out, or get yourself involved and then maybe like create more trouble for yourself?
Exactly. I even think there's a really small example. So, uh, my my neighbor next door, my neighbor next door. That's what a neighbor is, right? So, my neighbor trash can is outside. It's outside, and I know that recently he's been in ill health. I have the moment of, am I the type of person who walks over and grabs my neighbor's trash can, and just takes it up for him, so that way he can open up the door and see that it's been done? Or do I just walk back into my house and, completely ignore that, right? You have those little moments throughout your life. And I'm not saying that if you don't take the trash can up, you are inherently a bad person, because who knows what's going on in your day in that moment that is rushing you back inside. You're about to be late to a soccer practice that you need to go to. There's all sorts of things. Like, I'm not really here to judge people in that way, because you don't know the whole story. But in the moment, I want to be the type of person who goes and gets the trash can. And like, the theme for me, Kia, is these are all little moments of that validation of who I am, what is my identity. And also, when you talk about identity, I think a lot of people perceive their identity as like what is happening to them oftentimes. And obviously that's incorrect. Like, if we just examine that we don't even need to go fully engaged in Socratic method, dig deep on it. Like, we can just look at that and say, no, that's inherently wrong. My identity is what I do. What do I control? So, like, going through everything with my mother-in-law, thinking about starting a business, all of that. The reason, first off, I didn't talk about publicly, I'm actually fine basically sharing any story, but it also is so close to people who could also then see it online, who were within the family. And I don't know their comfort level of me airing their stuff, basically. But, there were conversations that I had behind the scenes with some folks who I trusted, who I would share that with. And, even coaching clients who sometimes wanted to know, like, anything bad going on? Like, can you actually relate here? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I know what it's like to go through those scenarios. They don't all look the same, but they all follow similar trend lines and wrap around similar principles.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so just, I love this sort of moments of decision principle, right? Like, you kind of create this context of, when you're in that, do you, instead of letting your circumstances dictate what you do, start from the inside. Who are you? And then act according to who you are. Not according to what you do. Like, some people, they look at the things that they do. They do things to try to be the person that they think they should be. It's really the other way around. Take a moment.
Or they buy things to try and be the person that they think they are, right? How many people have purchased a training course to convince themselves that they are that? Like, how many, I mean, and let's be real, right? Like, you and I know behind the scenes, when it comes to, say, copywriting, for example, there are a lot of people who will purchase copywriting courses and never touch them, right? They'll purchase mindset courses and never touch them. And the whole thing is, they're trying to buy that identity in the moment. And again, maybe it's better that you put the money down than not having done it, because it at least says, maybe it's not going to be this course. Maybe it won't be the next course, but maybe it'll be the one beyond that finally you dig in. And you needed to make those first two purchases to go down that road. But there are people who make the mistake of making an equivalence of, I purchased, therefore I am. And that's incorrect.
That's right. That's right. There's like the activity of it, like the doing something, including the buying and joining and even planning. There's a lot of planning talking about.
Oh, the amount of, the number of times that I've had to hear, like, people just talk about, like, all you need is one good idea. There are so many good ideas, and I'm not invalidating ideas, but a lot of times the one good idea talk becomes, okay, but we have 100 of them. We have 100 good ideas. And the problem is, they're all good ideas, which means we need to get rid of at least 97 of them and be okay with the fact that we're not going to go down those paths today. That cripples people, Kia. Like, they go, oh my God, but if I let go of those other 97 ideas, doesn't that mean I failed those ideas? No, you failed the 3 that you're supposed to be doing. That's where you're failing right now. You need to go and implement. That's the issue. Oh my gosh. Number of battles over the need to implement have been endless, and it's one that I will always fight.
Yeah. And the way that you said it, it's really how they define success, right? The success is not going to be you did the 100. Success is going to be you did the 3 and you were consistent with it. And I think part of the problem, and I go back to this theme a lot when I, talk to some of my guests, because everybody has, there's so much good information. There's so much available to us to do, to think, to act on, to, absorb too much. There's this overwhelm that paralyzes us where, and my very first interview that I had with Michael Levine, the whole conversation just ended up being that, like, he's just get rid of, it was this age old wisdom, right? He's like 2 generations back from us. And it's this age old wisdom of get rid of the distractions, just go back to what was working. And so you can just focus on the one thing.
Exactly.
Which I think is a great idea, is a great, to keep in mind. But just, going back to the whole identity and the moments of decision, I really like. Which
I got to say, Kia, when the moments of decision, I keep thinking about George Bush, being referred to as I'm the decider, right? Like so now I'm imagining myself as George Bush in this situation. I'm really enjoying it, I'll say.
Hey, I don't remember that. Maybe I was too young for that, or I wasn't, but yes, the making the decision about what you're, rather than letting you go with the flow. So, but having it come from a place of, am I the type of person who does this or does that? And then making that decision. I had a similar story, kind of funnier, where I shared that in an email where I was on the beach and I saw these what are they called? The horseshoe crabs. And they were kind of all over. And there was this one, somebody, like watching, somebody came and picked it up and threw it back in the water. And I was like, oh, that's so good. Like, good on them. And I started to walk down the beach and then I saw these horseshoe crabs. And I was like, oh, I should pick it up and throw it back. And because I felt so good when I saw that person do it. And I'm like, this horseshoe crab is like this big, literally.
They're huge.
He's got claws. And like, I quickly realized I am not that type of person. I am all for saving. Like, if they're like, I fostered like 5 litters of kittens like 1 year. So I love animals and I love taking care of animals, but I'm not the kind to go pick up a horseshoe crab and throw it back in. So funny story, but it was like, who are you first? And make decisions based on that. And sometimes you'll make a stupid decision and you do something, you're like, wait, that did not feel good. And so you go back and you make adjustment to that identity. And that's okay too,
Oh yeah.
And that's okay too. Well, I love that. So so let me ask this. These are all the hard, we'll get to some fun questions. Well, these are some hard questions. So
I'm all good. To me, they're all fun questions.
All right. So what continues to, you shared some of the challenges that you've had to overcome. And like, I think starting a business at the time that you did, with everything that it took, with, personally what's going on. And so I think that was a huge challenge. And it was, well, I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like knowing that, like you said, put up or shut up. Like, you've been doing this for this many years, working, showing people how to do it, having success in it with others. Are you ready to put your skin in the game and say, well, are you right? So that was the moment of, that's how you overcame that, was you decided this is who I am. Now, what continues to be a challenge that continues to test your resolve?
Oh, good question. So for me, we'll call it the forever challenge, which is honoring the always complicated place that I'm at in life. And I'm not saying my place in life is any more complicated than anyone else necessarily. I mean, maybe it's more complicated than some, it's less complicated than others. but it's just my place in life. And that place in life is I have one company. It's about to be two companies. I have an extreme devotion to showing up to my kids' soccer practices, dance rehearsals, dance practice. I want to be there for these things. I also am extremely committed to my physical health. I will not sacrifice working out, for example. And I do want to invest in my hobbies because those are things that when I'm 95 years old, I still want to be working with my hands as much as possible. And so I have a lot of things in life that I want to be engaged with, which means, and this is such a privileged problem to have, but everyone's got their stuff, right? It's because I'm really driven to always be trying new things, growing skills, etc. There is a competition for my time and my attention that at times can cause, I hate using the term anxiety because it seems unfair. Like there are people who have real anxiety about real problems, but there is this sensation of I'm being pulled to so many places. I need to honor my family. And if I'm not paying close attention to my family right now, does that make me a bad person? I know the answer is no. And I have these principles to fall back on. But that's something that's always going on is where is my time going? Because I'm not a hustle bro, to say the least. I'm not looking to work 14 to 16-hour days. I have the kids at home. I have the things to do. But I also know, Kia, that when my kids are out of the house, 12, 14-hour days working on businesses, sure, I'm all for that. But I got to honor the stage of life that I'm currently at and make the most of where I'm at with what I have to achieve a very big dream while honoring all the things that I have in my life.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with a lot of people, and I appreciate you putting words around that. And you're right. It is this life gets complicated the older you get. Though your kids, I mean, when kids are young, it's actually simple. When they get older, it's a lot more complicated. They demand more time and energy from you.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships get complicated, finances get complicated, ideas get complicated. You start to enter into this generational transition, which, like for personally me, I'm entering into it. So now there's this generation that I'm like, I don't, even with my own kids, right? So yes, the complication can either crush people where they go into depression or they get addictions or any of those things. Or what you said, you recognize that I call it, so I understand the anxiety you're talking about of always wanting to either stay ahead or on track and not let things fall to the ground as much as you can, right?
Yeah.
There's an anxiety, but I call it a tension. It's a tension that's created from and I just talked about this from another guest, things that you love that bring enjoyment and things that you have to do. And it's the quest of closing that. And so, between that, there's this tension that's created, and all tension is energy. It's just energy that you say it's anxiety or it's excitement or it's anticipation or it's fear or whatever it may be. But learning to use it in a way that propels you rather than crushes you.
One of the things that the language frameworks that I try to use, and I use pretty frequently, and I use with my clients as well, and I encourage them to use it, is switching the phrase I have to I get to. Like right now, we just had some water damage in the house. So we're dealing with a bunch of contractors. And in my head, the language that I want to say is, I have to deal with all these contractors. The language I should be using, that I do try to switch to, is I get to have these contractors come in and do a brand new flooring plan for me. I get to do that. I don't have to deal with it. I get to do it. And so switching that and trying to find that positive balance, and it does require engagement of yourself, engagement to say like, wait, what's my tool here, right? I know that I have a big toolbox of how to handle these types of situations mentally. So let me find the right tool for the job. And oftentimes that is one of them, switching to say, I get to do this. Or the old one that we all know is, search for the silver lining. If that's the phrase that helps you find the good, find the opportunity, just work to pull that tool out of the toolbox. It's actually funny. The coaching that I do, I talk a lot about identity and the way to help you shift to the identity you want to be, in addition to making choices if you are that person already, is to make sure you have the tools to support it. So like if I decide I want to be a more optimistic person, okay, well, are you adding the tools to your toolbox that when the cynic shows up, you go, oh, wait, I have a wrench that takes care of this. Well, wrench isn't the right one for this. I need my circular saw version to tear through this. And you have some tools to support that gifts you the new identity. It becomes more and more natural over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So creating a language framework, I think is so key, because from toddlerhood, the reason why we have tantrums is because we don't have words. Well, it doesn't stop when we get to adults, except our tantrums look like alcoholism. They look like addiction. They look like depression. They look like divorce. They look like whatever, right? So when we don't have the language to express, our tantrums are still there. So I love what you said. And I love that you said there are tools in the toolbox to really get through those in whatever context there is. I call it, so you said, you get to instead of I have to. I call it, it's an adventure, right? Like The Hobbit and Bilbo Baggins. We're just going on an adventure. And
The Fellowship of the Rings is my favorite movie. I love The Lord of the Rings. So now we're really talking my space.
Oh my gosh. Every time, isn't it like every time you watch it, there's some truth or revelation that just you're like, ah. And no matter where you are in your life, like what point, like whatever phase you are in your life, you watch it, you're like, ah.
Yes.
Those are the kind of stories, right? So so it's like my kids, like every time they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. But like, my daughter being in college and everything's like a challenge. I'm like, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. She's like, you're right. It's an adventure.
In my mastermind program, Genesis, at the beginning, it's interesting. You have like what you state at the beginning of the podcast episode each time, right? At the beginning of each Genesis meeting, when we meet online, I have a specific thing that I run through as well, and including sort of values that we have within the group. And one of them is, this is all a journey. It's all an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes away that judgment of this is good or bad. Yeah. It's right. So speaking of tools in your toolbox, what is your favorite tool? And I'll share mine after you share yours. You said that the biggest challenge is managing the complexity of life and sort of the emotions that it and sort of whatever it comes on, that tension that it creates in your life. What is your favorite tool for that? If you haven't already shared that, or what is that?
Basically, it's what's one thing I can do right now. So what's one thing under my control that I can move? And it doesn't have to be significant. It could be as simple as, so I have, especially on weekends, I have what I call 9 a.m. syndrome, which is a lot of people want to sleep in on the weekends. For me, if I don't accomplish something by 9 a.m. on a weekend, I go insane. You can ask my wife, Missy. I am not pleasant to be around. So if I'm going to accomplish something, I've had to reformat what an accomplishment may look like. So it could be as simple as, why don't I send a text message to a friend or a business partner or something who I haven't really reached out to in the last 3 to 6 months? Great. I have moved my business forward by one tiny little toe length, but that's one more toe length than if I didn't do anything. So in those moments where I'm questioning or, working out, oh, I don't have time to work out today. That's not true. You have time to go take a 10-minute walk that you wouldn't have taken otherwise. Go and do it. Get yourself moving a little bit. So for me, that's the ultimate tool, is one little action within your control.
Yeah, that's excellent. And sometimes it's that one little action that creates just the momentum you need.
Yeah.
To move forward through that the tension, right? The tension. So my favorite tool currently, right? It may change in, next year or next month or in 2 years, but currently my favorite tool is movement. So if life feels like, if there's things like swirling that it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel the pressure in my mind, in, my chest, or, we feel pressure. So take time to move and to let that, whatever that tension is, like acknowledge it through movement and let
Yeah.
it move the way it wants to move so that it goes out. And that's just been incredible. And I think men do this naturally because they're so physically, most men are so physically active. And so, when they go work out or when they're like, oh, they naturally get the energy release from that. Maybe children, maybe I should say children do this naturally, right? Because they're so physically
Yeah.
active. So that's
Yeah,
my
especially my kids. My goodness,
especially.
my kids move. Oh my, especially Cassidy, my 7-year-old. Goodness gracious, that kid moves to the degree that I I I I can barely fathom. I watch it up close and I'm like, I literally don't know where it comes from. And even other parents comment, they're just like, she's always going. It's not chaotic. Like there's direction to it. She's practicing gymnastic skills, this, that, and the other thing. Actually, a long time ago, Missy and I, um, the phrase that we trade back and forth is movement is medicine. When something is ailing you, I will always opt to move, right? And now, mind you, there's like a level of addiction at this point in my life when it comes to movement and working out that sometimes is a little bit unhealthy. And I do push myself too far, and eventually my body will literally like basically bring flu-like symptoms on for a day every now and then and sort of shut me down. But I'm okay with that weird and vexing relationship with my physical self, because I'd rather have that than the alternative. Like I don't drink. There's no drugs. I try and eat relatively well. Caffeine is a massive vice of mine. I will admit to that. But like working, yeah. Like I mean, I'm currently working on. I brewed a 10-cup pot of coffee, and I'm about to finish it. So that gives you a sense of where I'm at in life. The good news is I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine, so I sleep. I sleep like a baby. My goodness, I get my sleep. Um, but yeah, like I going and moving, I have to do it. And sometimes I guess the issue is like the reason I know it's a little bit of an addiction is that sometimes I have to do it because if I don't do it, that's what causes the problem. Rather than being a salve for an issue, the lack of it is the issue. And that's why I sort of look at it as, it borders on a very healthy and sometimes problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, anything can move into that, right?
Yeah.
But I really love there's the productivity side of, that tool in your toolbox. Well, what's the one thing I can do? And you sort of feel gratification that because we have a desire to be productive. But
Yes.
just like you said, that moves into an obsession that can burn you out if everything is about productivity.
Yeah.
So even that can move into the unhealthy, which, I been there, done that. Like,
Yeah.
and actually, I bequeathed it to my daughter, who she had to thank God early on. She was like, "That is not the life I want, Mom. In fact, I'm moving to Miami."
That's right. Yeah. She's having a grand old time down in the Sunshine State.
Sunshine, where it really is like I think anything coastal near the water, warm all year round. Palm trees is immediately going to remove the tension and keep you in sort of this high vibrational happy mode. So, but learning to, yes, productivity is good. So when you're feeling tense, do
Yeah.
the one thing so you gratify that need, but also what you do is just because you enjoy it physically, or emotionally, or even mentally. It's just pure for the enjoyment of it. Movement is enjoyable. It's
Yeah.
as long as you're doing movement that's enjoyable. So there's a balance. There's a balance to it all, and you can't, do one or the other all the time.
After we have this discussion, I'm gonna go run about 4 miles because I've got to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'll be doing that later today. So no, I don't run. I walk. So,
Walking's great. Walking is
yes.
fantastic.
Just want to make that clear. I just when I stopped running after I had my kids for whatever reason. And then like
Yeah.
a few years later, I was like, okay, I used to run a lot. And I was like, well, let me pick running back up. And, after 2 kids, and I ran about 500 yards. And I was like, oh, ow, my hip, oh, my knee. Never mind. That was the end of that. So walking is it for me. So let me ask you this. So if you could be free from the day to day of the work that you are currently doing, and there was zero loss of quality, in your work, your relationships, or your finances, what would you do with your time?
It always comes down to building something. And so it's a little bit of an amorphous question or answer. Um, it just built, I like creating. It's, it's the through line for me. And so a lot of that manifests already in the work that I do, and a lot of it manifests in the hobbies that I have. Um, I maybe I would, on top of that, I would probably spend even more time engaged in physical activities. Like if we're talking about just the usage of time, where would I put it? I'd probably hike more. I'd engage with the outdoors more. But that would be my balance against the just constant drive to create, to build, to construct physically and mentally. So I'm also fortunate in that, and that's kind of another tool in the toolbox, is even in the times where I'm doing the type of work that you might say I have to do this, it really can be reframed as like, oh, I get to do this because I'm making something new that wasn't there before. And that's exciting and engaging. And to be fair, I'm terrible at maintenance mode on anything whatsoever. So yeah, I would continually be in the pursuit of creating something new and building stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly right. I believe one of my core, like probably the top value, core value is that we are all creators, and that is the ultimate expression of freedom, is the ability to create the thing that we feel in our heart and get the vision for. And the idea of being more in nature, that's where we receive sort of the inspiration of, I want to create this, whether it's your business, whether it's your family, whether it's your future, whether it's your
Yeah.
career, whether it's the one thing that you create with your hands and then is used, as some practical use. So I think that is exactly what really creates a whole and content life. And then when you're whole and content, then you can share that with other people and lead them along that journey, which I think is exactly what you're doing. So just really, really commend you for that, and just acknowledge you for that, Charley, that, from that, 13, 14 years ago, you really followed, discipline, but with passion. And I think the people who work with you are truly, truly, I don't say lucky, but it's like called, right? It's like meant to be. And so, anyway, I don't say these empty words. I don't give out compliments like that, but just from this
Thank you.
conversation, yeah, just from this conversation, from knowing you, I think, what you're doing, keep on doing it, keep on, making a difference in people's lives, and serving yourself, serving others. So what
Yeah.
advice would you give to your younger self?
Boy, oh boy, it's funny. I know that I've thought about this question. Oh, yeah. I know what I would have said. Um, Skip college, learn to copyright. That would have been my advice to my younger self. Skip college, learn copywriting, because copywriting was the gateway drug for me to really understand the rest of business. Because when you learn copywriting from someone like Dan Kennedy, Dan talks about being a overall strategist for a business, right? Like he's able to look into all parts of a business and really understand. He doesn't have to have outright mastery of something, but he really understands the different components of a business and where levers are likely not being pulled, where there are gaps that probably need to be filled. And obviously it starts from a marketing primacy and marketing and sales primacy position, but all of those things then supporting that effort, whether it's, okay, the deliverables have to match what you're selling them, or we need to make our deliverables better to be able to sell better, yada, yada. But I would tell myself, like, hey, because the other thing is I went to school as a theater major, and as you know, Kia, and I loved doing productions. I loved doing shows, and I could have auditioned for shows locally. I could have done staged readings. I could have done all types of stuff to fulfill that side of myself. Well, gaining an early edge, putting to use one of the skill sets that I had but hadn't fully cultivated, which was writing, and would have cultivated that much faster. I had the technical aptitude. I knew and still know how to like construct a website, how to be very intentional in all of that. But yeah, I would skip college, man. Go learn copywriting. That will serve you extraordinarily well.
Well, that is very renegade advice, which I appreciate because I tell my son, who's just turned 13, that college is
Mm.
optional for him. And that as long as he learns, as long as he can figure out a way to be creative, have a creative
Mhm.
outlet in his life, to maintain healthy relationships, and to create a source of income for himself, that's it. That's
Yeah.
achieving the full life. And so he's actively looking at ways to do that. So he actually asked me if he had to go to high school too.
I mean, fair question to ask, I suppose. I look back and some of the things that college can't really teach you how to be obsessive, right? And that was something that the only reason I was a theater major in college is because I was obsessive about it. And that's the trait that has helped a lot. And I like to refer to it as, the nerd side, right? I know that you get this as well, that like nerd side where you learn about something, you're like, I don't do surface learning. Like this, everything is a rabbit hole, and not in a like, oh, I'm now a fan of Marvel. And so I'm going to do a Wikipedia rabbit hole. I'm talking about, you talked about Schrodinger's cat and this way to perceive how two truths can be simultaneously true, but when observed, only one is true. And then that's a base level of quantum physics. Okay, I need to know more about this because this has massively impacted my worldview. And okay, now I'm going to grab some like Michio Saku books and go deep on that and really learn about it, and not just learn about the thing, but start letting that information impact so many other areas of thinking, and watch all of this combine in this weird cesspool or soup or whatever it is of information that I've taken in. And to be obsessive about something is such a gift in and of itself. Like when you're only trading on the surface, I can't imagine life that way at the very least. I'm sure that is a life well lived for many a person. Who am I to judge on that? But I can't imagine life without that nerd level, obsessive, go deep. I want to like leatherworking, Kia. I mean, that's something that a lot of people. So I've purchased books on leatherworking. I'm gonna do a little bit like shameless bragging on myself, which is a horrible, horrible thing to do, but I'm gonna do it nonetheless. And I've purchased books on leatherworking where I'm flipping through the pages, and obviously they take photographs to teach you about the subject. And they've put it out there with like these pieces and everything. I'm looking at this going, I do better work than this. Like I do better work because I have been obsessive and I practice, and I in anxiety ridden moments, like was so frustrated over saddle stitching. I literally spent 6 hours figuring out why I kept not being able to get the stitch on the right angle until I found the one video, and I practiced over and over again to get it right. And that's the type of obsessive where I do seek near mastery in everything that I go after. Um, Again, it has its unhealthy side as well. I think people can clearly hear like, oh, this guy might be a little bit nutty when it comes to some of this stuff, but I just can't imagine life any other way.
Yeah. No, it's
Like law firms. I've gone way deeper than when I talk to some people who like work in the law firm consulting space, and I kind of offhanded throw some of the different like business models out there, pricing structures and stuff. I'm astonished at the number of people who apparently haven't asked those questions of law firm owners that they worked with or catalog that information. Like it's so interesting. I can't, and I'm only scratching the daggum surface. That I know how much more there is to go into there. But I'll never assume that I know all of it.
yeah. Yeah. So I see it as this intense curiosity to go deep into something. So that's part of it. And anything is going to have its um negative, like you said, like you can kind of go, wait, you just spent 6 hours figuring out how to do a SaaS, which you could have maybe whatever, some other way. And then on the flip side, you have people who just coast and they're like, you know what, I can't be bothered with the details. I'm going to do this. And that's
Yeah.
fine too. And that has its negative sides too.
Yeah.
And so you just continue to, I think, at the end of the day, being around, surrounding yourself with people who can help you walk you through going deeper without getting overwhelmed, and then telling you like, you know what, you're overthinking this, move on. So you need
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need a healthy balance of both of that, and really the discipline to take the time to reflect on those things. So
Yeah.
which is why I love doing, talking with people and fun and finding out, well, how is it that you do it? And maybe that gives
Yeah.
some idea of how they do it. So I'm sure that we've done that. I hope that we have, that whoever has been listening, they heard something that they needed to hear. It's going to move them to that next step or that next phase or
Yeah.
whatever the season they're in. And you just keep on keeping on with the people that you're impacting. And I really, really appreciate, everything that you shared. Thank you for coming on. What's the best way for people to stay connected with you?
Yeah. So, if you're listening to this, you have a podcast app open. I have a podcast called They Don't Teach This in Law School. Go over there, press the follow, the subscribe button. That is a fantastic gateway drug, and you already like podcasts. So here's another one to add to the lineup that I'm sure you'll enjoy if you enjoy this show. And then over at lawfirmalchemy.com, you're going to find at least one free resource that you can grab, if not several, that you can go down and start implementing directly in your law firm. If that's something that you're looking to level up your life and law firm, I would go to that place. And here's what I'll mention real quick is I clearly have I have my personality and my archetype, which I embrace wholeheartedly. But what I hope everyone hears is when you enter this universe of Law Firm Alchemy, I'm not there to make you a duplicate of me. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in putting tools in front of law firm owners that allow them to maximize who they are. And yes, sometimes challenge who you might perceive yourself to be. So that way you can grow as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a marketer, all of that. But don't think that I have to be like Charley. That's not the case at all. I want you to be all of you in the process. And if that interests you, go over to lawfirmalchemy.com and let's figure out a way to start this journey together.
Wonderful. Love that. And highly recommend, whether you are a lawyer or not, or you have a business or not, give it a follow. The things that Charley talks about go beyond entrepreneurship and law firm. They really are how to do life. And so I hope that my listeners heard some of that. Thank you again, Charley. Thank you to my listeners for tuning in. And again, my name is Kia Arian, and I'm reminding you that your skills, your talents have been given to you for a reason. There are people who stand to benefit from what you offer, and there are others who you are not called to help. Focus on the former group. They're waiting for you.
If you enjoyed this broadcast, subscribe to the show, connect with Kia on LinkedIn, and let her know what inspired you. This broadcast was brought to you by Zyne, a marketing and brand development agency that helps attorneys, entrepreneurs, and professional service providers create raving clients who love them, stay with them, and tell others about them. Visit ZyneMarketing.com/newsletter to sign up and receive the Breathe Life newsletter, a print publication of Zyne.